This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
All right, here we go. All right, so obviously we're live on Talk 4 Media, TV, radio, podcasting, K4HD TV, radio, Worldwide TV, Women on TV, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, obviously, and I have to mention Health TV this time because Howard Bloom is in the house. Anyhow, so Howard, you got a bunch of girls. There's two more coming on, so I just wanted to load them all up on these. Let's start with Redondo Beach, nonstop Terri, maybe with over 3 million views and still counting. Tomorrow, Terri, we will be at 1.1 million views on Edie Hand. You're at 1.150 and counting on the Flex 24. So good for you. So she used to be known as DJ Bad Ash. Now she's just Bad Ash because she's a great singer. She's a great disc jockey. She's so talented. The one and only Bad Ash, Ashley Willis. And
Hello.
So Miami, Florida, the person who uploads our show, Vocally Tosh, singer-songwriter. We got to get her going out with everything because she's rocking everything. Vocally Tosh. Victoria Renee is coming on, and I think Trixie's going to pop on last minute because Howard, they all wanted to be here. So guess what? Ashley really wanted to talk to you. Vocally's never talked to you. Terri couldn't wait to talk to you again. I always love to talk to you. The other girls wanted to jump on. Howard, we've never had so many women on a show before talking to you. So what he does, Howard's an author. He's one of the best publicists in the world. I say the best publicist in the world because he could come back and probably still do it and make anybody a star all over again. So with all the books that he's written, I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'll start here. The last one I just read was The Lucifer Principle, which is really, really good, Howard. That blows my mind away. But the only one that I had, the best book that I read last year, number one on our website, is going on our website tomorrow, is Einstein, Michael Jackson, and Me. This is a great read. I've had people try to take my book, Howard, and I keep saying, no, you can't have this one. So
That's
with
wonderful.
that, all the people that he's represent, here's the 3 movies that he saved. These are important. Purple Rain, The Longest Yard. If you ever remember that one, not the Adam Sandler one, the original one with Burt Reynolds. And Pumping Iron. Nobody knew about this film, but here we go. It helped get the fitness craze going. So the artists that he's represent, this is a long list because he deserves to have it all mentioned. Michael Jackson, Prince, Run DMC, Earth, Wind and Fire, Billy Joel, Kiss, Queen, Paul Simon, Joan Jett, AC/DC, Bob Marley, Chaka Khan, and the list goes on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Howard Bloom.
Brian, it's a pleasure to see you again.
So let's get going with this because Ashley, you're going to get the first question because she wanted to be on this one and she has some things going on when it comes in the world of PR to you, Howard, and then we'll jump in. Go ahead, Ash.
Wonderful. Hi, Howard. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Ashley. You're looking gorgeous today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So yeah, I have a ton of questions for you. I'm in the middle of a whole new rebrand where Brian was saying I'm going by Bad Ash now.
Right.
And I actually just hired a PR team who told me after I rebranded everything to Bad Ash, they said, actually, you know what? We believe that Ashley Willis is the way to go 100% because, Bad Ash kind of lives in one little lane, whereas Ashley Willis can last forever. And so now I'm in the middle of a whole new rebrand again. And yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, one question. Do you think a name has anything to do with PR and
A name has a lot to do with PR.
Okay.
Remember Joan Jett?
Yep.
I've spoken to Joan's mother. I've never asked what her actual name was before she rebranded herself as Joan Jett. But the most important thing to know is that you're not marketing, you're not selling an image, you're selling your fucking goddamn soul. And what I mean by that is, you know how you sit down in front of a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen on a Tuesday afternoon knowing you have to write a lyric. And you see that blank in front of you and you're terrified and you're absolutely certain that you cannot possibly write a lyric. You have no idea of how you've ever written any of your lyrics in the past.
Oh my God. It's the most relatable thing I've ever heard.
Right. And on a reasonably good day, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a lyric in front of you. Something inside you wrote that lyric. Once and twice in your life, you're going to write a lyric so perfect that it feels as if that lyric has a life of its own and wrote itself through you. And as your publicist, my job would have been to find the gods inside of you, your soul, that wrote that lyric. And when you go on stage, not all performers have this experience, but when you go on stage, if you are really a charismatic performer, you, on a good night, see the eyes of the audience widen. You see their faces melt. You see them melt into a common blob, whether it's 170 people or 170,000 people. And you see that common blob reach a tunnel out to you, a pseudopod out to you, and channel its energy through you. And you become an empty pipe for that energy, and you have an out-of-body experience. You feel that you are on the ceiling watching all of this take place because you're being danced like a marionette. And you feel the energy of the audience. You feel it go up to somewhere around your head. You feel it be utterly transmogrified into your next moves. Those moves channel back to the audience, and you see their eyes widening even further. And it's a continuous feedback loop. And when you get off stage, when you get off stage on one of those really amazing nights, it takes an hour for your normal personality to return. You have been an empty pipe for what Peter Townsend called, the audience, the soul of the audience, and the Godhead, for an hour and 10 minutes. And the minute you walk off stage, yes, you're an empty pipe. And Peter Townsend was trying to get Eric Clapton off of drugs. George Harrison was working on it too. George did not succeed, but he wrote a song about it, the one that's all the names of fancy chocolates, Montelli Moore and all of that. That was written to Eric Clapton. It was Peter Townsend who came in and said to Eric, I understand why you're using drugs. You go on stage, and for 65 minutes, you are a pipe for the souls of 70,000 people and the Godhead. The minute you walk off that stage and go behind the curtain, you're an empty pipe. And that emptiness aches. And you try to fill it with something. And you fill it with heroin, cocaine. The main point is, if I were your publicist, my job would have been to find not only the gods that wrote your lyrics or your melodies, but the gods who danced you on stage.
Wow.
Because those are the most essential you. That is the self below the floorboards of the self. That is the most powerful, normally unexpressed part of you. It doesn't even have words with which to express itself. And my job as your publicist is to find that soul, to find the gods inside of you, to keep you in touch with those gods inside of you so you can stay true to them, and to build not an image, not a marketing campaign, not an attempt to get a product across, but a direct connection between your soul and the souls of your audience. So I'll give you an example. One day, I got a call from John Mellencamp. I had insisted that if I was going to work with him, look, one day I was driving a car on Sunset Boulevard. This is before I'd ever met John Mellencamp. A song came on the radio that was so powerful that you tell me if you've ever had this experience. It's the only time I've ever had it in my life. This song was so powerful that I could not drive. Wow. I was a danger on the road. Wow. And I needed to find the quickest parking space and pull into it, stop the car, and just listen to the rest of the song. And it turned out to be Hurt So Good by John Mellencamp. Then
Wow.
John's manager came to me and said, I want you to work with John Mellencamp. And I said, fine, I've been following his career. He's about to become a 2-hit wonder. He deserves permanence. I know how to get it for him. But if I'm going to get it for him, I'm going to spend 6 months reading every interview, or 6 weeks reading every interview he's ever done, looking at every album cover he's ever put out, studying him intensely. And then I'm going to have to come out to his territory, wherever it is that reflects him the most, and go into a room with just him and me. No wives, no managers, no assistants, no nothing. And my job is to find that fucking soul that I'm talking about. And the day we did that with Mellencamp, we started at 9 o'clock in the morning. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, John looked hollowed out. All of his energy had gone into this. And he was as hollowed out as a scarecrow. And his eyes looked like empty sockets, just big shadows. And
What does that process look like?
It's different with every single artist. I always start with a very simple question, and that is, when did you first become interested in music? And the reason is that we humans go through certain imprinting points, certain points in our lives at which our minds open up to something with a specific set of characteristics. And once we see that something, our brain wraps itself around that experience and holds on to it for the rest of our lives. It becomes a passion point. It becomes one center, one pixel in that soul, in the gods inside that we're talking about. So, and usually that imprinting point, and this may be different for a girl, but the imprinting point consists of attention plus sexuality. So for Prince, that moment came when his mother took him to a rehearsal his father was doing at a local theater. And there are 500 empty seats, and they're all pointed at his father. There's a spotlight, and it's pointed at his father. And behind his father were 5 of the most beautiful women he had ever seen in his life. That was it. That was his key imprinting point for music. With Kevin Cronin of REO Speedwagon, with whom we had the biggest selling album of 1981. It was seeing Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show. Then, and remember all the screaming and attention and sexuality in that performance. And then seeing the Beatles 10 years later on the Ed Sullivan Show. So I looked for that point, and I looked for other passion points, for other imprinting points, the age of 10, the age of 16, wherever they happen to be. And then I built your story. I built the story I brought back to my staff that they were going to sell on those passion points and the story of those passion points. And I did a transcript. I was sitting there taking notes on the entire conversation. If you got ahead of me, I would say, wait. I write very slowly. Can you say that again? And I then organized that transcript into a chronological story. So it told the story of the building of your most essential self, at least the most essential self that was in your music. And I sent it back to you. And I explained to you, I'm going to bring you into New York for 3 days of interviews, 8 interviews a day. Then I'm going to fly you out to LA for 3 days of interviews, 8 interviews a day. You have to treat each interviewer as if you have never told your story before to anyone.
Yep.
And you have to tell the story I've given you. It doesn't matter what question the interviewer asks you. He'll always start with, how do you characterize your music? Which is one of the stupidest questions ever invented.
I hate it. What artist are you most like?
Yeah, right. So
They
you
already
have
exist.
to turn. Well, you have to turn that, no matter what the question, to your story. And when you are finished telling your story, as if you have never told it to anyone before in your life, that reporter, in those days, the music journalists were all men. That reporter is going to go home to his wife that night and say, honey, I'm the most brilliant interviewer in the world. I asked this astonishing question. How do you characterize your music? And I got this story out of Prince or John Mellencamp or name the artist. And every year as you grow, that soul inside of you is going to grow. So in John's case, Mellencamp's case, I got a call one day. It was John. He almost never called me. And he said, look, I've just been offered $1.25 million by Heinz Ketchup. Now, here was the deal. Heinz Ketchup in those days, the squeeze bottle hadn't been invented. And Heinz Ketchup came in a glass bottle. And that resulted in you'd get a hamburger, and it was piping hot, and you'd try to get the ketchup out of the bottle, and it wouldn't come out. And you would bang on it with your silverware. You would bounce it up and down with your hand. No matter what you did, the fucking ketchup would not come out. And by the time it came out, your hamburger was cold. So Heinz.
We froze?
Uh-oh. Did you freeze? Yeah, Howard froze for a minute.
Okay, am I back?
No, you're back.
Back.
Okay, so Heinz Ketchup decided to make a virtue out of this flaw. And it got Carly Simon's song Anticipation and showed some hopeless dude shaking the ketchup bottle for 60 seconds. And it claimed that this was a sign of the quality of Heinz Ketchup. And frankly, it probably is. Nonetheless, I mean,
why didn't you put the cap on the bottom? Like, why did that take us so many years to do? Like,
yes, exactly. Invention, the subject of invention is a whole other subject we'll cover some other time because it's fascinating. But at any rate, now they wanted to use Hurt So Good. And John said, should I accept the money? And I said, absolutely not. And here's why. Imagine that this is the city of Jerusalem back in the days of the Bible, and it has 5-story high walls, and it has a narrow little entrance. And you, as a kid, are outside of that city. Nobody will accept you in that city. So you stand out in the wilderness, and a voice speaks on your behalf. A person raises his fist on your behalf and says, I have a right to exist. I have a right to an identity. Flashing that fist in the face of these massive walls. That's what you represent, I told John. And if you accept this $1.25 million, you will no longer be standing outside the gates of that city. You will be inside the city going to dinner parties. And you will no longer be able to speak on behalf of your audience. So you cannot accept this ketchup commercial. Now that's John, that's unique. Well, it was all my artists, frankly. All of them spoke on behalf of rebellion. Look at Billy Idol, just as an example.
He's coming back. What he's doing? He's getting phone calls.
He's Houdini. He's gonna pop.
No, he's probably getting phone calls from Australia and everything because he's in that science world. So everybody around the world is calling Howard. And then what Ash, one of the reasons why I always wanted you to be on with us, Victoria and Tasha, is because of what Howard has been doing, what he's been creating. Because this book is fabulous. How he met Prince. He took Prince before nobody knew who he was in a closet and did the same interview. He did the same thing with Morris Day in the time, all of them. Prince made all his artists go through Howard. They all went to this house. He did the same thing with all of them. And he may not have time to tell you, but I know the stories on all that stuff like that. So I hope that answers that a little bit. And then Howard's back. Go ahead,
Yes,
Howard.
here he is.
So, and my assistant has hooked me directly by landline to the router, and there's something wrong with the connection. So my apologies. At any rate, so your job as the artist, since, well, you're unlikely to have a publicist who will help you with this process. It was unique to me. And it was so unique that Prince made me put every artist that he was associated through this process. He found
Hey, Howard, I was just telling him about that while you were gone.
Right. So, but your job is to do it for yourself.
Okay.
So your name, using your actual name, is probably the most authentic thing that you can do. And then you've got to come to understand, to the best of your limited ability, who that self is, why you got involved with music, why you're passionate about it, why you stick with it, why it means so much to you, what it means to you. And you've got to be able to tell the story that explains that.
Okay.
And that story is your own story.
Yeah.
It's not a made-up story.
Of course.
It's not a custom-tailored story. It's the genuine, real you that you are selling.
Yeah. Now, for a new artist nowadays in 2021, with this crazy world that we live in, everything being online and, you know, COVID, there's no performances, but hopefully that's starting to change. What would you say to an up-and-coming artist, how they could put a foot forward and try and get some attention, some press, like what would be the first outlet?
That's hard. But if you can write songs, if you could perform them with the kind of charisma that a Chaka Khan had, or a Joan Jett, or Billy Idol. Billy Idol and Joan Jett were two people who were dead when they were off stage. They did not really come to life until they were on stage in front of an audience. And that's one of the things that made them such powerful performers. Yeah. So first, you've got to write your music. Secondly, you've got to have a sufficient depth of music so that you've got more than 5 songs. So you've got a dozen songs, at least. Then you have to make sure those things are really up to the standard. And what's the standard? Your standard. Are these things that you would want to listen to above anything else that's on streaming services, Pandora or Spotify?
Exactly.
And once you've got a song, like for Joan Jett, it was "I Love Rock and Roll." I knew a year and a half in advance that song was going to be a hit, and I knew exactly what we had to do before that song could become a hit. And this is when Joan had been turned down by 23 record companies. She didn't have a record company at this point. Once you've got your "I Love Rock and Roll," your absolutely irresistible song, even if it's a cover, because Joan did covers.
Okay.
Joan didn't write songs.
Then
you have to put out your most charismatic performance in front of a camera, so that you can put it up on YouTube and start to build an audience. And you have to think, who are the people who think like me? Who are the people who feel the way I do? And the real secret to a performer, to a superstar, is the voice of a subculture. That subculture may not even recognize its existence yet. And you, as the artist who gives it its voice, may be the voice that shows it exists and brings its members together.
Very cool.
That's really what a huge superstardom is really all about. It's giving people a sense of an
And that's
Let
one
me
of the
just
reasons
finish that sentence. It's giving people a sense of identity when they feel lost. Giving people a sense that they are not alone in their heads experiencing things that are insane, but in fact that there are 10,000, 100,000, or 100 million people who feel the way they do, and they are not lone, insane people. They are a multitude. They are a movement. Okay, Brian, over to you.
Love it.
And that's one of the reasons why I love to bring Tosh on and Ash and Victoria. And oh, by the way, Joan Jett wrote the foreword on his book. That's how important Howard was to Joan. So I'm going to make sure I get a bunch of Howard's books and give them to you guys, because once you start it, you can't put it down. It's very, very good. So forward by Joan.
Wow.
Brian, Joan Jett's one of the people that I can't sing, so I'm the only one here who's not a singer. But I love Joan Jett, and she's definitely somebody that I would love to meet one day. I've been a big fan of my whole life of Joan Jett, because as everybody knows, I am a rocker at heart. That's, all I listen to, basically.
Well, you want to hear the story of how I got involved with Joan Jett?
Yes, I've heard it. But it's a great story.
Yeah, Brian, have we already got it on one of our 3 previous episodes?
We did, but it's a fascinating story.
But go ahead. Tell the
okay,
3 girls.
So here's the deal. Once upon a time, when I was working at ABC Records, forming their East Coast Public and Artist Relations Department, I was working out of a cubicle. And there was a guy who used to come into the office, and always, even though we had no idea of who each other were, he always said hello to me. And I was profoundly grateful for that, because I grew up in isolation. No other kids would have anything to do with me. My parents didn't have time or enthusiasm for me. And so if somebody shows the slightest kindness, it means the world to me.
Aw.
And one day I got a call from this person, and he asked for a meeting. So he came over for a meeting, and he explained that Joan Jett had been touring Europe, especially the clubs in Germany where the Beatles used to perform. And she was being very poorly handled. There was no hotel room. She was sleeping on the floor of the club. She was all sweated up in her leather jacket. They turned off the thermostat at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the place froze during the hours within which she was trying to sleep. Her teeth were chattering, and she was literally eating the food off of hotel room trays stuck outside the door.
Wow.
And he was trying, Kenny Laguna, who was a songwriter and had been hired, a Swedish company, had given Joan $25,000 to make an album. In those days, it cost $100,000 to make an album. And they had hired Kenny as the producer. So that's what he was, a songwriter and producer. But he wanted to make sure Joan wasn't mistreated. So he asked as a favor if I could get a line in Cashbox. Cashbox was the least significant of the 3 trade magazines of the time. And that line in Cashbox, he was sure would get him a record company deal. Again, Joan had been turned down by 26 record companies. Just about every record company in the business had turned her down. And then he wouldn't have to manage her anymore. He could go back to being a producer and a songwriter, and the record company would make Joan a star. And I sat him down on my couch, and I pulled up a chair that loomed over him, and said, look, that's not the way it works. There's no such thing as getting a line in Cashbox and out of that getting a deal with a record company. Second, the day you get a deal with a record company is the day your troubles really begin. As odd as it sounds, the record company will throw every single obstacle in your path. And your job is to have a Panzer Tank Brigade strategy. In World War II, German Panzer tanks, they could roll over chicken coops, they could roll over trees, they could roll over small houses, and that's what you have to be prepared for.
The art of
and
war.
here's what, yes, and here's what, if you're willing, I will do. First of all, you have to agree to work the way I do, 17-hour days, 7 days a week. And if you do everything that I tell you to do, I guarantee you that in 2 years, we will have a star. And what I meant by that is I had been studying how to build stardom for something like 7 years at that point, intensely. And I knew exactly what to do with Joan. And the real secret to developing a career, even today with YouTube and Pandora and everything else that we've got available, is touring. It's when people see you in person that they feel a personal bond with you if you are an outstanding, extraordinary performer. And you can't help whether you're an extraordinary performer or not. You either are or you aren't.
Right.
Can't teach that.
Right. So I said, the first step was to get Joan a booking agent, because booking agents get you live concert dates. And I had a very good relationship with the Copeland family. The Copelands were Miles Copeland, who founded IRS Records.
The Police. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Stuart Copeland, who founded the Police, and Ian Copeland, who handled the Police's booking and the booking of just about every other punk act on the planet. FBI was the name of his booking agency. And I had tight relationships with all of them. And so I got Joan a booking agency deal with Ian Copeland at FBI. Now, there's something you have to know about agents. Remember how record companies will throw out every obstacle they possibly can in your path? Agents are there to take orders. What they like is incoming phone calls, people asking for you. Going out and making phone calls and selling you? No, that's not generally what they do, even though that's what you expect of them. So for a month and a half, we got 0 dates out of FBI.
Not a lottery ticket.
No, and because I had been working with the Copelands through some of the most crucial moments of their lives, I was able to call Ian and say, Ian, get your ass off your chair. Start getting dates for Joan Jett. And he started to get dates. Then I called Kenny and said, okay, now look, if we booked a date in Cleveland and you have if you don't have an album, the people at the Cleveland daily papers cannot write about you. So we need an album. Take that Swedish album of yours, print up 350 copies of it, put any record label on it you want, and we'll be able to get you pressed in Cleveland. So Kenny created Blackheart Records.
Wow.
And instead of printing 3,500 records, he printed more like 3,000 records. And he did something I hadn't thought of. He hired a promotion man. Now, in those days, promotion men were the guys who went into radio stations and sold DJs on playing your record. And that promotion man, who now had Sirius XM radio, that promotion man was extremely good at what he did. And he was delivering airplay on a regular basis. When we had covered, basically, Joan was doing the East Coast Atlantic seaboard strip from Bangor, Maine, on to the Florida Keys. And she did it once, and she got audiences of 50 people. She did it twice, and she got audiences of 150 people. She did it the third time, and she got audiences of 500 people. Then the booking or the bookers at the clubs started calling Kenny and making real money offers. Touring is expensive. It costs much more money than you're going to make in the beginning. And Kenny had been using the money he had saved for his 6-month-old daughter's college education for all of this. And Kenny got all excited because finally they were giving him money offers that would have allowed him to pay back the money to his daughter's college fund that he had been stealing.
Better get a scholarship, kid.
And I said, Kenny, no, you cannot accept any of those offers. You've done the East Coast strip 3 times. You have to leave them hungry. Now it's time to move west, do another strip of the country, and do it for the first 3 times, and then leave that audience hungry. And you've got a deadline. Remember, we don't have a record deal, but you've got a deadline. You have a song on this album, I Love Rock and Roll. When by the time that song becomes a hit, you will have needed to cover every single strip of this country 3 times, every single one. What you're doing is you're laying down kindling so that when the hit takes off, it causes a fire. It sets the whole nation on fire. If you've missed any part of the country, that isn't going to happen, and Joan's going to be a 2-hit wonder. Because the difference between a 2-hit wonder and an enduring artist is touring, is getting that deep bond with your audience that comes from sharing souls with them, for God's sakes. It's their soul that's powering you.
Yeah.
They're giving you as much as you are giving them. And that's an experience that people do not forget. So we did it. We managed to hit the whole country. Kenny was working with the most powerful lawyer in the entertainment industry, Alan Grubman. Alan Grubman got Kenny a deal with Neil Bogart, the head of Casablanca Records. Neil needed Joan as a tax write-off. So Neil's promo men go into each DJ's office, and they have a list of 4 priority records for the week. And their job is to get that DJ to play those 4 priority records. And Joan's record was never on the priority list. And the result was that when the Casablanca guy came into your office and you were a DJ and asked for 4 slots, he saw that you were already playing Joan Jett. And he asked you to take that off because that was one of the slots he needed for his priority records, or he'd lose his frigging job. So the guys from Casablanca Records were actively trying to get DJs to stop playing Joan Jett.
Wow.
So I went over to Alan Grubman's office. When I had set up my office, the office hadn't been ready for the first 2 weeks. It needed to be painted. So while my office was being painted, Alan Grubman let me use his office. For a man who is known for his power and ruthlessness, this was an act of extraordinary kindness. So I knew Alan very well. And I went over to Alan's office, which was just a couple of 100 yards from my office on East 55th Street in Manhattan. And I was in Alan's office with him when he was trying to get to a meeting. So he was trying to come out from behind his desk and go up along the wall between, or the space between the desk and the wall. And I pinned him. This is the only time in my life when I have ever done this. I am 5'5" and 145 pounds.
I love you.
I am tiny. I am the size of an insect. There are praying mantises that are bigger than I am. But I pinned Alan Grubman, the most powerful attorney in the business, up against the wall, flattened him against the wall, and said, Alan, you will not fuck with this artist.
That's so awesome.
And explained that you cannot allow Casablanca to view Joan Jett as a tax write-off. She is a living, vigorous artist. She's one of the most powerful artists you will ever work with in your life. She has far more charisma than Neil Bogart, the head of Casablanca Records. And if you stop this artist's career, you will be stopping a piece of music history.
Wow, yeah.
I love
So
the
they
fight.
started,
Good.
so Casablanca Records started to put Joan Jett on their priority list.
Priority list.
Because of you.
I
And,
love it.
and we just managed to squeak through our 3 dates on the Pacific Strip in time for I Love Rock and Roll to take off.
Amazing.
So that's
Applause.
how you build a career. I never had to sit down and interview Joan Jett, which is very strange because I made that interview an absolute demand to get to your soul, but I didn't need it because everything Joan was expressed in her body when she was on stage. Everything she was expressed in the way that she raised her fist. Because unbelievable as it sounds, there are differences in the expression of a fist from John Mellencamp, from Billy Idol, and from Joan Jett.
Yeah.
All of them make unique statements, as astonishing as that is.
Yeah.
And I understood her from her body language and worked from there. So I don't know if that gives you any sense of what career building.
You're
that's
an intuitive. I
yeah,
like it.
it's a pretty.
And within a year and a half, so I was wrong in my calculation. Remember, I said I will give you a star in 2 years. I was very precise. No, we went platinum in 18 months. We went double platinum in 18 months. So I may have visions, but apparently they have small structural flaws.
Vocally Tosh,
Wow.
you got a question. Go ahead and ask Howard.
Wow. Honestly, I think this is the best interview I've been on. I've just been sponging everything. Howard, hi.
Hi, Josh.
I wanted to ask you a question. So as a new artist, I've seen a lot of like big celebrities, like as they're releasing a song, that they release a song with a lyric video and then release the music video weeks later. Is that something that a new artist
Well, say it again. I was busy thinking about one career in particular. So they do what?
So they release a song with a lyric video, and then maybe like a couple weeks later, they release the music video. Is that something that new artists should do or should not do, since we don't have that big audience yet that will be like, oh, okay, she threw a new music video?
The real trick is to reach people, and that's the hardest part. And I can't say that I'm an expert at it in this day and age, because my YouTube series, if you look at my latest episode, it's had 430 hits since it went up on Sunday. 430 is pathetic. When I used to be on the Amazing Atheists show, we would get 135,000 hits. When I was on Joe Rogan, we got close to 1 million hits. I have an animation of my theory of the beginning, middle, and end of the universe that I came up with when I was 16 that predicted dark energy 38 years in advance. Wow. It's a 5.5 minute animation, but the guy who made that animation is a genius at marketing on the net. And so that animation has had over 800,000 views. Wow. But that's not my magic. That's the magic of the guy who created the video, who happens to be a genius at this kind of promotion. How Joe Rogan, okay, so I have about 950,000 hits on my Joe Rogan episode. For Joe Rogan, that's pitiful. Joe Rogan gets 1.2 million hits or 1.5 million hits. when it's a major hot button thing. So I am not the expert on how to negotiate. All I can tell you, how to negotiate in this new business, except don't forget, touring is the most indispensable part of your work. Performing in front of live audiences, unless you're a dud. Well, look, I had a client who was a dud. He had written a song called Something Like Fire. It was absolutely terrific. It came out of TK Records in Florida, the same label that brought you the original disco artist, George McRae. Oh, yeah. And this kid was white. He was a kind of an introvert. And when he was a kid, he had taken 2 reel-to-reel tape recorders that recorded 2 tracks each. And he had rigged them together in his bedroom so he could record 8 tracks. And he had started writing songs and recording them. Then a booking agent, once Fire was a hit, had gotten him one of the biggest tour dates you could possibly get. It was with Parliament and Funkadelic at Madison Square Garden. Wow. And I went to see it because he was my client. And he was a limp piece of Kleenex on stage. Well, years later, I ran into him on the first floor of the building that housed the office of Freddie DeMann, who was a friend of mine and still is. Freddie was the manager for Michael Jackson during a critical period of Michael's career and was, see if you've heard of this one, he was the manager for Madonna. So I was surprised to see my artist, Peter Brown, the introvert, going up to Freddie DeMann's office. I asked him what he was doing. He said, well, Freddie is my manager. I thought, that's very strange. Why would Freddie manage a songwriter who was so unstage ready that playing in his bedroom was what he did best? And then talking to Peter, he mentioned one of the songs he had written, Material Girl.
Wow. Okay.
So sometimes, yes. So sometimes your genius is not your on-stage presence. I mean, if you catch fire on stage and have one of those ecstatic experiences that I was discussing, you've got gold. You've got platinum. If that doesn't happen to you, maybe you'd better be a singer-songwriter who goes to Nashville and sells her songs and concentrates on publishing companies for the songs and making as many connections as possible to sell the songs. So there are different niches available for different kinds of people. I'm sure that Peter Brown has made a very good living.
Absolutely.
Ever since, and he has probably written a whole mess of other songs of that caliber because he had a gift.
If you're a dud on stage, you probably don't love being on stage anyway. So maybe that was a win-win.
Well, we're all afraid of being on stage. We, except for Michael Jackson. I mean, Michael's the only one I know who, before he went on stage, very secretly, he wouldn't allow us to publicize this, would have 2 kids with cancer in the city that he was performing in, who had wanted more than anything else in life to meet Michael Jackson. That was what he used to rev himself up and remind himself of what his mission was when he went on stage, which was he felt that God had given him a quality of awe, wonder, and surprise so far beyond the normal that it's just shattering. It's a whole different realm of possibility. And he felt that because God had given him that gift, it was his job to give that quality of awe, wonder, and surprise to his kids. Aww, and beautiful. That's why he made, when he started putting together his Victory Tour, a year before the tour, he started signing the best lighting people, the best staging people, the best sound people, and the best magicians he could find. And he made them sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so that whatever they were doing was absolutely secret. And the reason was, when he went on stage, he wanted to evoke quality of surprise that was 3 times beyond the normal, because that's what he experienced. And he felt God had given him that gift. It was his job to give it to his kids. So, but most of us are a little bit afraid when we go on stage. Most of us start checking our systems and discovering, oh my God, I'm nauseous, I can't go on stage. And
That's me all the time.
right, all kinds of little excuses, and then we hit the stage, and the energy of the audience hits us, and we become a radically transformed human being, and we forget all.
You black out.
We can have personal injuries, knee pains and elbow pains and all kinds of things, and they all disappear in the extraordinary light of that blistering, gleaming experience.
Hey, Howard, let me ask you this real quick. We got about 4 minutes. What would you suggest? Because I see touring starting to opening up sometime really big after October. I think that's the safest, closest to the end of the year.
That's a very good estimate.
Well, and I've been telling all my music friends, get ready, because I see musicians getting the economy going back. I see everybody rushing to go see live concerts, and I keep telling them. I've been telling them since this time last year, and this time last year we hadn't spoken with you yet. It was a month later, and at that point I was like, get ready. You better have all those songs written. You better be ready to get the stage running, because everybody's going to be out the gate. Everybody, are you ready?
And here's a lesson from Prince. When Prince was 15 years old, he put his first band together, and they started touring all over Minnesota. They were doing any kind of date they could get their hands on. Why? Because your first year or two of performing is preparation. It's getting used to being in front of an audience. It's getting to the point where stepping on stage is as normal as breathing for you. It doesn't mean you don't have stage fright. But it's a whole different experience once you're really used to going out there and standing in the spotlight. And I know this because I've been performing since, God knows, I was 16 years old, or maybe a little bit younger. So I've had these experiences.
You perform as well?
Well, what we're doing right now is a performance.
Okay.
I do this on rare occasion these days in front of live audiences. And you probably read or heard from Brian about my first ecstatic experience on stage. I don't know if you've got time. I don't know if you've got time for it, Brian,
we don't have time because it's a story, but it's going to be long. And what I will do is, again, if you get a chance, it's called Einstein, Michael Jackson, and Me. You've got to read that one first and then work your way back. But also, there's a documentary. Howard, you got about a minute 50? Talk about the documentary really quickly, because that's good.
It's the Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom. It was made by Charlie Hoxie, who has won 3 Emmys. Right. And this film has won 2 festival awards, even though this is a year when festivals have all been canceled. Nonetheless,
it's won 2. It's very, very good.
Well, it's so compelling, apparently. I talk in it about starting a Howard Bloom Institute to keep my way of thinking alive after I die. And it's so compelling that a bunch of people, 13 people, all the way from Germany to LA and London in between, have come together to form that Howard Bloom Institute. And they're going to have their website up and running by April 1st. So apparently it's a very compelling film. I'm too close to it to see, but I know when we did the first festival performance at Doc NYC and then went up on stage afterwards to do a Q&A, I saw something I had never seen before in my life. And remember, I've seen Michael Jackson audiences, Prince audiences, John Mellencamp audiences. This was something I had just not seen. Every single person, 220 people in that room, was beaming. You know how when people's faces turn red and there are smiles they can't control on their faces? They were all beaming like that. And the collective audience energy was unlike anything I can describe. And unlike anything I have ever seen before. And apparently this film inspired people in a way that lifted them out of themselves and took them to something utterly and completely transcendent.
Wow.
And with that, because Terri and I saw it, I'll make sure everybody sees this. So Howard, we got to thank you for coming back on, because we have to do a part 2 live with Howard sometime in the future, and we will, because he's got so many other stories. We don't even get into science or stuff he's doing with NASA or anything like that yet.
Wow,
Vocally Tosh, thank you for coming back on. We really appreciate that. I hope you got your answer question. Nonstop, you're back to Nonstop again. Congratulations. Ashley, I hope you got your answers. You did get your answers, and we will set up a part 2 with Howard. and Victoria Renee Hand. Yes, we will get it going in the South, back in Tennessee again. We get everything going because, like I said, after October, things will get rocking and rolling. And so I've got to say this. I always lead people with this. If you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. Thank you. This is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More. We will see you next week. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.